it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have a very fun project to share with you that is my first attempt at mixed media. Media is not something I normally do as my type of style of artwork. I'm more of a cleaner kind of style. I love the look of mixed media projects and the way that people put them together, but it's just not a style that I end up being able to translate from myself to paper. So I'm going to show you how I approached mixed media and how I took it and put a clean and simple twist on it. I'm going to be using some new products from Altenew, including their Enchanted Iris stamp set. This is a really beautiful stamp set and part of their new May release. So what we're going to be creating is a really beautiful, almost shadow box kind of frame. The frame itself, though, is going to be put on a stand, and it has a beautiful translucent appearance to it because of the way we're going to end up creating this project and the glitter that we're going to be adding to the frame itself. So let's get started. So here I've got a black frame. You can use any type of frame. I actually would have preferred to have used a white frame, but a black frame is all I had on hand at the time that I was creating this project. So I'm going to be working with the black frame, and I'm prepping it first with a bit of gesso. And the gesso is a surface that's going to allow me to put other material on top, and it'll hold onto the material a lot better. I'm going to be adding both paint and Nouveau embellishment mousse to this project. So I'm going to cover the frame completely with this gesso, so that way I have a nice even coating around all the areas, and in some cases I went over an area twice just to make sure I had it covered really good. Once my gesso dried, I'm taking a bit of the Nouveau embellishment mousse. This is a beautiful teal color. It's one of my favorites. And Nouveau embellishment mousse, for those of you that aren't familiar with the product, is a paste, and it's a metallic paste, so it's got this really beautiful metallic appearance. It's so much fun to add to your project. You can use it just like any types of embossing paste or texture paste, and use it with stencils and other various ways. I'm going to be using it, however, with a rag, and I'm going to buff it onto my frame. I'm putting multiple layers on this frame because this is a black frame, so again, the black is going to show through really well until I have enough layers on here. So as I'm adding the layers, I'm making sure to really get a nice thin coating over top of this. I don't want it to be too thick because otherwise it's going to turn gloppy. So it took quite a few layers to get this frame completely covered with the embellishment mousse, so that way it had a nice beautiful even coating. Once I had all those layers applied down to the frame and the frame was completely covered with the mousse, I'm going to get a little bit more, and now I'm going to start working on the sides because I needed the front to dry so that way I wasn't going to mess it up as I work on the sides. So I'm working on pieces here at a time. First with the front, now with the sides, and I'm going to repeat the same process with the sides of the frame by adding the embellishment mousse in multiple layers. I'm slowing it down here so you can kind of get an idea of how I apply the embellishment mousse and how long it took me to do this. If you had a lighter colored frame, you probably wouldn't need quite as many layers, but because I had black, it needed quite a few. Alright, so once that frame was completely covered with embellishment mousse, I set it aside to dry, and now I'm moving on to the glass part of the frame. Now this frame that I'm working with is a 4x6 frame, so you can use any size you'd like. I went with something smaller because it's what I had, but it would be really cool to make this a little bit bigger. So with the frame itself, I want to add glitter all over this, so that way when the light catches it, it's got this beautiful translucent magical appearance. So I'm going to apply the embossing paste. This is Wendy Vecchi embossing paste, and it's translucent, so which means once this dries, it'll be clear, which is what we want. We don't want opaque on this. I'm applying the texture paste in a nice thin coating, getting this completely covered. It's going to take a little bit of working to get it completely covered and smoothed out because this is glass. Once you have it mostly covered, I'm going to bring in a sponge brush and really smush this paste across the glass. As I'm doing this, this is pushing the excess paste off of the glass itself, so that way I can have a nice even coating. I'm going to be carefully lifting this up off of my work surface, and I'm going to brush along the edges just to make sure I have it good and covered, and then I'll pick up the excess and put that back in the jar when I'm all done. But as you see, I'm just quickly applying a thin coating over top of this glass, and that's going to be my base for the glitter that I'm going to add on top. This is a great way to be able to use the embossing paste that you have to adhere down the glitter. You could try this with glues. I'm sure liquid glues would work just as well, but I wanted to use the paste because I knew this would be completely translucent. I'm using some of this beautiful white glitter from Tonic Studios. This is part of their Nouveau line. I'm completely covering the glass with this glitter until I have a nice even coating over top. I don't want any areas uncovered with the glitter. After I've applied the glitter, I'm going to let it sit for a second, and then I'll be able to lift this up off of the paper. I'm going to tap it against the desk just to get some of the excess glitter off. And then there you can see this gorgeous glittery appearance we have on this glass. It's so pretty. It looks all frosted. Alright, so it's the next day, and I'm going ahead and showing you how everything looks once it's dried. Here's the glass, and then there's the frame. For the frame, I added a bit of white paint to the backside just to hide the black because I didn't want the black showing through at all. And I just added a couple coats of that. Didn't need to be perfect because, again, this is the backside, so I didn't worry about having it completely covered. Alright, so now it's time to work on building the pieces that's going to go inside of our frame. So I'm taking the Enchanted Irises stamp set and I stamped it onto some white cardstock, and I'm coloring these with Copic markers. Coloring did take quite a bit of time, so I've sped this up so that way you don't have to watch me color for quite as long as it took me to actually color them in. I'm coloring first with some purples on the irises, and I'm starting with the inner part of the iris. As I'm coloring, I'm working with the lightest color first, and then I'm bringing in the darkest color, then fading out with some of the mid-tone colors, and then I'll finally go back over top of the entire piece once again with the lightest color. This is helping me get a nice contrasted shaded look. I want to make sure that there are a lot of really dark areas. That way this has a lot of really nice contrast. And I'm going to have to build up layers to create this effect, because as you add some of the lighter colors on top of the coloring that you've already done, especially with the darker colors and you're adding the lighter colors on top, the lighter colors tend to kind of neutralize the darker colors a little bit, so they're not quite as bold and as intense as they were when you first applied them down. So as I'm coloring, I'm making sure to go back over some of those darker areas just to intensify them a little bit more. Here I'm working on some of the darker areas of the irises. These outermost petals are really dark when you look at an iris in real life, so I want to go ahead and make sure I emulate that effect with my coloring. I'm adding in a more rosier color of purple. A lot of irises have more of a blue-violet tone, but I wanted to add the red-violet because I just thought it looked really pretty. So I'm going to be mixing my red violets and my blue violets together on this iris. That way it just adds a little bit of artistic interest. As I keep coloring, I'm making sure again to feather in that darker area multiple times so that way I get a nice contrast. I'll end up going back in with some more darker colors again once things have a chance to dry, and I'll really intensify some of the details. Now I'm working on the stems and I'm bringing in a few greens, adding some shading. I'm also going to bring in a darker green and add some really dark shading underneath where the petal is. For the leaves, I'm going ahead and doing the same thing. I'm going to add some of the lightest color and then work towards my darkest color in this case. I didn't add the darkest color right away. I wanted to build that up gradually. When I'm coloring, I mix around a little bit. Sometimes I go with my darkest first, and then sometimes I go with my lightest colors first. It all depends on what I feel like doing. Here's a look at how I colored each of the different images. Again, this coloring took quite a bit of time, so I did not want to color all of the images on camera. So if you're interested in seeing how I did the coloring in more detail, I do have another video which I will link to in the video description and also at the end of this video. I also have it over at my blog. It will have the coloring in more detail. The video will be slowed down a little bit more so it won't be quite so fast, and you'll be able to get an idea of what I did to add in the shading and create the depth that we have on these images. After coloring my images, it's time to work on attaching things together. I'm taking some double-sided foam tape and I'm cutting it down into smaller strips. So these strips are going to fit on the inside of the frame here. Now you could attach the glass down onto the frame itself, but it wouldn't have a shadow box effect. And that's what I want to create here. I want to create a shadow box effect. So by adding the double-sided tape all the way around these edges and by layering it until I reach the top of the frame, that will allow me to then attach the glass onto the frame, and the glass will be in the back of the frame itself and not in the front. So that's going to create the shadow box look. So after I had layered multiple layers of foam tape onto this frame, I'm going around with a bit of liquid glue, some glossy accents just to give a little bit stronger hold to the glass. And I'm going to press that down into the glossy accents and the foam tape. And this adheres down really well. I can't get this to come off after it's dried. You do need to let it dry and cure so that way it's not going to get ruined. So I did set this aside and let it dry overnight so that way I didn't ruin it. So later on, I'm going ahead and attaching the irises to my panel. I'm using liquid glue at the base of the flowers, and then I'm added foam tape to the top part of the flowers, and that gives it a little bit of interest and some more lifelike dimension. For the leaves, I curled them with my finger. So I kind of curled the underside of the leaf so that way when I attach this down with a piece of foam tape, it kind of lifts up towards you. So it looks a little bit more realistic. And I think this just adds a really nice detail to this floral arrangement and gives the flowers and leaves a bit more of a lifelike appearance. Now, I will mention that I did add another iris later on. I decided I wanted to add a third one. At the time here, though, I only had two, so will notice that difference in the final pictures. So I need to ground these irises, so I decided to bring in some Nouveau glitter drops. This is the honey color, and I'm using that to create the dirt for where my flowers are growing out of. So I think this is just really cool and a great way to create that interest and that realistic look to these flowers, but it adds that nice bit of sparkle and shine to the overall design. I'm now bringing in some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh, and they add a nice extra bit of sparkle to the overall background. This was a really fun project to make, and you can see how we can use multiple products here to create the look of this really beautiful glittery shadow box. So I hope this has given you some inspiration for doing mixed media. Mixed media doesn't have to be collages and different types of materials that are very popular in mixed media. It can be something as simple as this project that we created here in the video, and I really had fun with this. This was a great home decor piece that I now have in my studio, and I love being able to look at it and see it catch the light. It's just really fun. So I hope this has given you some inspiration for trying some clean and simple mixed media of your own. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, or you can head on over to my blog to get more information, including information on the blog hop. This is part of the Altenew May release blog hop. There are giveaways as well, so make sure you check out my blog for more information on that. If you enjoyed this video, here are two more that you might find interesting. The first one is the coloring of the irises at a more slower version and played to music. And then the other one is another video that features some Altenew products. So please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!